to jump into the schedule, man. So when we talk about the schedule, I kind of want to break this down to some smaller nuggets, man. So number one, which game stood out to you the most? Like, what are you the most excited about after seeing the schedule release?
You know what, man? This might seem like a little bit of a cop out, but it's 100% not a cop out. Week one, Carolina, because you got to think what's so interesting about this game. Um, Obviously, Bryce Young, he's coming to play in Atlanta, a stadium that he's played in a bunch from,
A
being from the
lot.
university bit. But the thing is, we're seeing him. We don't know what to expect. He don't know what to expect. They don't have a lot of tape on Desmond Ritter. And in terms of the players that Desmond is going to be playing with, they don't have a lot of tape. So that game to me is going to be very intriguing because it's going to be two versions of each team that neither side really knows exactly how they're going to approach it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm pretty excited about game one as well. I love us getting Bryce Young now before he figures it out. he,
Yes.
he has the opportunity to kind of adapt to the game speed, and which is the biggest thing when you go from college to the pros is adapting to game speed.
Yeah.
So I hope that in game one we get a lot of pressure on him and make him feel very uncomfortable. I feel
Yeah.
excited
No
to see
doubt.
what Desmond Ritter's going to do. Now, again, Carolina has a really good defense, so he has to really protect the ball, which has been something he's been good at so far in the small sample size that we've seen. But at the same time, you got to feel a little bit more confident with Ritter because he has more NFL experience than Young does at this point. I know it's only 4 games, but
Four
he's
games
still
worth. I mean,
right. But that's different than 0. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
big difference. Bryce Young at
big,
0,
big difference. I don't know about big difference, but it's
but
it's a little
four
teeny
games.
tiny.
And if you look at it like this, he cut his teeth playing New Orleans in a really, really tough environment. So
Right.
I think that as far as him having like the game one jitters and maybe throwing an interception out of being nervous, we get to skip that. But at the same time, this is his first time actually being the signal caller without looking over his shoulder. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
what other game stood out
Yeah.
to you on the schedule? If you had to pick one more, what
Well,
was another game that stood out to you?
one more, I would probably say, I'm not gonna cop out and say the Saints because those are always two games that no matter when they're gonna be played, those are two games that we feel like we gotta win.
Right,
But
right.
outside of that, the Jacksonville game in London, because now you look up and Jacksonville's a pretty good team with a pretty good quarterback. So it used to be to where you felt confident that at least we would have a good opportunity to win that game. But now you can reasonably say that Jacksonville coming into the season that they're a better team than we are. So that game, being in London, it's not going to be a gimme regardless because Jacksonville is pretty
No,
good.
no. And I mean, the London one stands out to me too because you always you're a little bit nervous about like, is the game going to travel? We're going across the pond.
Right.
Our organization has played over there before, but for a lot of these guys, this is their first opportunity for that.
Yeah.
You wonder how are they going to make things still feel regular in preparation. So that one is one that kind of stands out to me. And this is going to be a marker because you're playing Calvin Ridley. He did start
Right.
here. He will be back. He'll probably be back to normal. Hopefully he doesn't just go off on us. But, those are big
Yeah.
questions going into
Yeah.
it. I think for me, the one that stands out to me
Yeah.
is the Texans. Not only playing Bryce Young, we got to see C.J. Stroud too. And that's going to be kind
Yeah.
of interesting to see what does he look like as an NFL player. The Texans are still
Yeah.
rebuilding, but they had a very good draft and a pretty solid offseason. So this is
Yeah, they
like,
did.
wow, you get 2 quarterbacks who are basically cutting their teeth. Can you jump on these guys early in the game and make them uncomfortable and kind of set the stage to put yourself in a position to win?
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. And also, the last game he played in college was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And even though he didn't win, that game is what got him drafted where he got drafted because what he did against a world-class collegiate defense. So that's another angle of it too. But not to dwell on the Texans too much. What I will say about the Saints, I'm gonna go ahead and jump out of the Texans boat right quick. The Saints game that we play them at home, no, it's actually not at home. It's on the road. It's the very last game of the season, January the 7th
Yeah, yeah.
of 2024. So that could be a game that's very pivotal in terms of, what if that's the game that decides whether we win the division or not, whether we make the playoffs or not. And we know a lot of times that's how it shakes out. So that game against the Saints could be a very, very important game because, they would love nothing more than to keep us out of the playoffs. And we would love nothing more than to keep them out of the playoffs. So that's a game to keep your eye on too, for sure.
I would agree because I thought the same thing when I looked at the season. I was like, man, this is basically these guys who make the schedule for the NFL know what they're doing. They really set this up where this is going to be must-watch TV because it's going to come down to, and let's not count Carolina out. This really could determine who wins between us, Carolina, or New Orleans. Because I do think it's going to be a tight race between those three. I don't see the Buccaneers really being in the same class with the rest of us. You got Baker Mayfield, and that's a mixed bag by itself. But I agree with you, man. I think that game is everything's going to be on the line in that game. It could determine, like you said, who wins the division, a wild card spot potentially. There's a lot that's going to weigh on that game. And it makes me really nervous to be in that situation to play that game, especially on the road for all of the marbles. I would much rather that be in our arena, but I mean, hey, you got to get through the fire to really, compete in the league. So I love that, though.
Yeah. But, here's a very interesting take on that game, though. The fact that Desmond Ritter's first start, and you mentioned this earlier, was down in New Orleans in that environment. At least it's not his first time in that environment. He knows what to expect. He's going to understand the importance of it, the crowd noise. He's going to get the energy because he was already there. And at this point, if he's still in the starting lineup, because that's not a given, but if he's gone through the whole season and he's already played in New Orleans before and it's his second time playing them that season, that could be something that gives him an advantage if he's the guy at that point, which, I honestly hope he is. But that's another aspect of that game that could, swing the pendulum on our side.
And I agree with you. And I think one of the things I looked at when I looked at that particular game that really stood out to me, let's just say Ritter's not the guy or he gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
You got a guy in Taylor Heineke that came from the NFC East that has played in very hostile environments, like, going to Giant Stadium, going to Cowboy Stadium, going to Philadelphia, and done very well. So I think that also is a good thing to look at. If he's not the guy or he's injured, you still have a guy that has played in some really hostile environments that won't get overwhelmed by playing in the Superdome. So I like that too.
Yeah.
I also like that we're not going to put all the pressure on Ritter. So again, let's just say we're in this last game. It determines everything is on the line. We can rely heavily on our run game now. With having Algier, with having B. John Robinson, with having CP, you can be very creative and rely on your run game. You can also give him some easy throws. He has a great rapport with Drake London, but now you have Jonnu Smith and you have Kyle Pitts, who's hopefully healthy at that time. So now that makes it a lot easier, too, where you're not asking him to basically air the ball out, throw bombs over and over again. That's not successful in that environment.
Right.
We've seen that already. So I think you're giving him a situation that is winnable. And then I wanted to get your take on this, too, just kind of talking about the schedule. Let's just kind of stick with this Saints game, right? How do you feel about the defense in this particular situation? You have added, another player in Trey Flowers now to your secondary. So how do you feel about us kind of holding up in an intense environment like that?
Well, as I told you, me and you have had a lot of conversations, off the record where we talk about, defense when it comes to the Falcons. To me, that's your last game of the season, right? Anything that's going to happen in that game, you are who you are at that point. it's not like anything that's going to happen. You're going to have some kind of out of character change where all of a sudden you're doing something that you weren't doing the previous 17 games. So for me, who we've been in that game is who we're going to be. So I can only hope that the pass rush is where it needs to be because in a loud environment like that, it's going to come down to the pass rush. So, for Flowers, for Bates, all the rest of those guys in the secondary, only thing I hope is that the pass rush lives up to the hype, these guys that they brought in. So for me, man, that's the main thing in an environment like that. You got to rush the passer. If it's David Carr, which it will be unless he's hurt,
Right.
you got to pressure him. Yeah, you got to pressure him. So in that situation, our secondary, it's poised for greatness. I will say that our secondary is poised for greatness. But in that environment and in some of the other environments we're gonna have to go into that we know are gonna be loud, it's gonna come down to that front seven, man. So all I'll say in that game particularly, we're gonna have to get pressure off the edges. Period. We're gonna have to get pressure off the edges. Also with Calais Campbell, however you pronounce his name,
Calais.
um, Calais. I'm always saying Calais. I'm country, but
You named the guy.
yeah, hey, I'm country. Everybody knows that. But at the end of the day, we don't know at that point in time in the season how healthy is he going to be? How many snaps are we going to be able to get out of him? We know he's going to be an interior besides Grady, but at the end of the day, that game is going to come down to the pass rush. How many healthy guys are we going to have to support the secondary? Because we know what the Saints are going to do. The Saints, they know us like the backside of their hand. They know us. They know how to attack us. They probably study us more than anybody. They probably, the day after the season, they're already looking at what we can do to the Falcons.
Right.
So in that game, they're going to do what they always do when we visit the Superdome. They're going to try to destroy our secondary. So the only thing I can hope is that the front seven holds up. If they do, we'll have a lot of success in that secondary like you were just talking about.
Well, I think what I like about it is the secondary being rebuilt now with having, Flowers, obviously with our current guys being healthy and Richie Grant. You like
Yeah.
he has more experience now. But you having Jesse Bates, you're bringing in a elite defensive captain. With the trade that you just made with Detroit, you've added so much help with Jeff Okudah now to your secondary.
Yeah.
That now, hopefully, and signing Trey Flowers, you're making them hold the ball. So you've got a secondary that's helping your pass rush. If those guys can do their job at a high level, and now they're holding the ball, your pass rushers can get home. I think my biggest concern when we talk about the pass rushers isn't really Calais Campbell. It's not Grady Jarrett. It's not even Lorenzo Carter. For me, it's D'Angelo Malone and Ebiketie. And it's not even Harrison because Harrison's a rookie. So I'm not going to put a lot on him. He's still developing.
What you get is what you get.
Ebiketie, to me, is the guy that has to take that next step. Because if he takes the next step, now, like you said, your pass rush is getting home. So that's kind of the wild card. I have no idea what's going to happen. But let me ask you this before we kind of go through and give our predictions, if you will.
Yeah.
Are there any games that you saw in there as possible trap games that maybe stood out to you?
Possible trap games. You know what, man? There's a lot of games in this schedule because I've heard people say that, okay, this is an easy schedule. You know what I mean? We're a team coming off of 5 losing seasons in a row. We're not in any position because you know what? It's a lot of teams that looked at this schedule and they're already marking us for a W. So we're in no position to talk about, what's easy for us. So with that being said, you gotta almost start with like a game like Chicago, for instance. Even though we're gonna be up there, but that's one that you look at. Tennessee, you kind of can look at that. To be honest with you, man, like you probably could have even said Detroit, but now Detroit is a good team.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now Detroit, technically based on their last season, they're probably a little bit better than us. But I would probably have to say, really, both of the Tampa Bay games, number one.
You stole my answer.
Yeah, both of the Tampa Bay games, number one. And from there, I would even probably say like a game like Arizona because it just seems like they're on the downturn. But yeah, that's where I'm at with.
Yeah, so if I'm touching on what you said, Detroit doesn't really worry me as much because Detroit is going to Detroit.
Yeah.
Even they're a good team. The Lions are going to figure it out
Yeah.
some type of way to keep you in the game. And
Right.
Jared Goff does throw interceptions. He's not, terrible at it, but he does throw interceptions. So
Right.
I'm not that worried about that one. Tennessee, not as much either because you got Arthur Smith. He pretty much schematically knows what they want to do. So I think they'll be very prepared for Tennessee.
Yeah.
He just came from there. He knows everything that's going to make Ryan Tannehill uncomfortable. So that one doesn't worry me as much either. What does kind of concern me is the Bears because typically we don't play well in the cold. The last cold weather game I really enjoyed was us going to Green Bay with Michael Vick. So, that was so many moons ago at this point that it's like, okay, that one kind of worries me a lot. Fortunately, we have a run game, and when it's cold, you got to run the ball. So, and
Right.
Justin Fields worries me because the last time we saw him, he kind of went wild on us, to be honest. So
Yeah, he
that
definitely
does
did.
worry me as well. And this time he's coming. We're going there, which is,
Yeah.
But fortunately, Desmond Ritter did come from Cincinnati. That is a cold weather place. Hopefully
True.
he'll be prepared. But Chicago is a whole different level, man. So, but I had the same trap games as being the Bucks. I mean, I was concerned about both of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
You go in there, you say Baker Mayfield, but Shake and Bake does have some games where he goes off, but he also throws the ball away a lot. He's terrible at protecting the ball. So hopefully
He
you can
does.
make him uncomfortable early and get him throwing picks, so and they still have weapons. They still have Michael Evans. They still got a solid defense, so those are the ones that concern me the most. So we kind of got the same answer as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
if you had to give your prediction of the season, what do you got us at, man?
Record wise.
Record wise.
Wow. You know what? Okay. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna say, I see a ceiling and I see kind of like a low point. A ceiling and a floor. I don't really see a lot of gray area in this ceiling. I
Okay.
think either the Falcons are going to surpass expectations or they're going to be where other people think we're going to be. Not the fans, but other teams and, people that work for ESPN, guys that make predictions. So, I think ceiling wise, I can look at it and say, potentially 10-7 is reasonable, if we stay healthy, if, Ritter is better than what we think he is, based on the small sample size that we've seen, because we don't know what he is.
Right.
So I could say 10-7. Outside of that, I can easily see us with the same record that we had last year. I can easily see us being right back at 7-9 is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that happening, easily because at the end of the day, number one, we don't know what we got in Ritter. We have no idea. I heard some people say he got better game after game after game. That doesn't mean a whole lot, in my opinion, just because it's small sample sizes. So number one. Number two, health wise, we got to stay healthy. The injury bug has bit us a lot recently. Pitts got to be out there. The good thing is we don't have to rely on CP, Patterson. We don't have to rely on him as much because now Bijan is going to fill that role a lot. But not to go on and stretch it out more than what I need to. I just think health is going to be like the number one thing for us. And the defense has got to make that leap above being average. You know what I mean? This defense is going to have to be above average. If they do that, 10-7. If those other things don't fill out the way that they need to, 7-9.
So before I give my prediction, I did want to ask you this question. Would you rather us get off to a fast start, or would you rather us kind of maybe crank it up at the end and be hot at the end?
Hot at the end, all day long. Hot at the end for sure. Teams
Okay.
that are hot at the end, those are the teams that usually make the playoffs. And when they make the playoffs, they are not easy to boot out. So definitely, I want to see us pick this thing up after the bye week. You know, how many games you got after the bye week? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like win 5 out of the last 7. Like that's what I would want to see.
So I'll have to give an opposite answer, although I have the same
Okay.
prediction. I'm not gonna try to tease it, but I said 10
Yeah.
and 7. I think we're gonna be 10 and 7. I just really believe
Okay.
it. Because I think that you've addressed so many things as far as defense, and you've protected yourself well on the injury bug. Like look at Cordell, right?
Right.
Part of what's going to make him be healthy and last the whole season, because he is older player, he's 32 at this point, is the fact that you have a stable of backs. You've got Bijan, you've got Algier. He don't have the same workload anymore.
Right.
Especially even if you look in the passing game. You added Scotty Miller. Drake London's going to be healthy. Jonnu Smith, an insurance policy again, where Pitts now you're protecting him, because look at what happened last year when he was hurt. It was a huge drop off for the tight end after that. So I think
Yeah.
that you did a good job addressing these things. You added a lot of depth to the roster. I'd probably like to say I want to see him get off to a fast pace start, because, again, you don't know what Ritter is. You've got a lot of young guys. And I think what happens, too, is if you get off to a fast start, now they have confidence. Where if you get off to a slow start, and especially with a young quarterback, it can go off the rails pretty quickly at that point. So I'd rather get off to
Yeah.
a fast
I agree with
start
that too.
leading and have a little bit of a cushion than to be, pressure at the end. I wouldn't want to put Ritter in that situation. And I know his
Yeah.
ceiling is possibly Russell Wilson because of where he was drafted, but I don't know. I think that's very wishful thinking. I hope he is Russell
Yeah.
Wilson, but
The
I think
great
it's really
unknown. We
wishful
got no
thinking.
idea.
At the same time,
Yeah.
he could be Joey Heisman, which I hope is not that either. He could be, his arm isn't as big. He could be Jeff George, just an average dude, with some skills. So
Right.
we hope it's not that, but I say 10 and 7. I think there will be a wild card. I'm not ready to say we're going to win the division yet, but I really want to win the division.
Yeah.
I really,
Me
really
too.
want the Falcons to win the division, but I think we're going to be 10 and 7 and possibly a wild card is where I got to say, man. So I think that's a solid prediction. We're gonna revisit this at some point and see,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Well, we appreciate y'all joining us for this episode. Again, continue to follow the ATL OG Sports Podcast. Wonderboy, where can they find us at on different social media platforms? Let them know where they can find us at.
Yeah, well, right now we're definitely getting rolling on Instagram. So on Instagram, you can find us over there, ATL_OGs. Shoot, I think that's it.
One more time for the people in the back, just in case. You gotta one more time for the people in the back. Where can y'all find us at on
Yeah,
Instagram?
yeah. It's ATL_sports_OGs. So ATL_sports_OGs. That's on Instagram. So definitely go out there, holler at us. You know what I'm saying? We'll definitely interact with you. And, we definitely want to embrace everybody that even has their own, sports blogs, platforms. So yeah, definitely go and holler at us over there.
And of course, like and subscribe so you can get notified when we drop our latest content. We got more content coming at you. We appreciate y'all watching the video. Continue to support us as we continue to bring y'all great ATL content. And like that, we gone.